You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are live. Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. Thank you for joining me live. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, in this live edition, we're going to talk a little bit about this game that just happened down in Gainesville. It was a tough game, got into some foul trouble. Some obvious problems became obvious again. And, the lack of size, I think, came back to bite us in this game against Florida, who seemed to have a size advantage. And, of course, had a shooting advantage down the stretch. Not much defense could do. They were pressing. They were doing everything they could game plan-wise. They played a tough game, but just wasn't meant to be. We're also, of course, going to talk some football as well. But since this game is freshly over, why not give it some run? Okay, so the tail of the tape in this game is this. Jason Edwards led all scoring, 20 points. Will Richard for Florida had 21 points. We were 50% from the field to Florida's 57%. Vandy shooting 31% from three-point land. Florida shooting a almost robust 50% from three-point land. That was probably the main difference in the game. Free throws, not good for either team. Rebounds, it was pretty even, but Florida had the advantage there. Turnovers, Vandy was able to cause 10, and Florida was able to win that battle, causing 11 points. Vandy had the advantage in the paint, and of course, 20 fouls to just 14 fouls. And Vandy actually had a lead at some point, but only by 4 points. And Florida had a lead of up to about 16 points. Your final, 86-75 for Vanderbilt. So in this game, honestly, it was Florida becoming red hot shooting from 3-point land. That game was just about all of that. Richard and Condon come up big. Clayton was Walter Clayton was out. He's their leading scorer, and it didn't matter. They they were on fire from 3-point range. Condon had also 9 rebounds as well, almost a double-double. Richard hit 5 of 7 from 3-point range. I mean, they were red hot from behind the arc, and teams that get hot behind the arc often they can pour those buckets on, and especially at home they can get that momentum. And it just didn't seem like Coach Todd Golden's crew relinquished that at all. So it just an impressive game by Florida, a pretty good game by Vandy. I mean, Vandy, I think. Obviously getting in foul trouble is not the greatest, but losing out on the rebounds and not being able to close out from 3-point land, and Florida getting hot from behind the arc, that doesn't help at all either. I thought Vanderbilt, especially down the stretch, I thought they did all they could to stay in the game. They were pressing, they were causing turnovers, but I just think that in the end it just became too much of a foul game and too much of a something that was happening with all of that. So it just wasn't meant to be for Mark Byington and his crew. They played a lot better. They had a lot more competitive toughness. They were able to get to the line. They were able to create some opportunities, some looks. Not an awesome night shooting from 3-point land, but certainly not the worst that they've ever had either. They were 47% they were 50% from the field. Florida was almost as good from the arc as Vandy was from 3-point land. So, or as Vandy was from the field. So that was interesting. So we are live, so you can actually comment and be a part of the show. Make sure you follow Locked On Vandy. And again, thank you for being our number one listen. But make sure you leave your comments. We're talking anything. Basketball game tonight, Vandy boys baseball. If you want to leave a comment on that, football, of course. What does improvement look like in that realm for Clark Lea? Last year the over/under was set at 2.5. I don't know what the over/unders are. I don't know if they've been set for Vandy, but I imagine I don't see a ton of credit until credit is earned. So we'll see about that. But the team's working hard with Coach Steiner in the weight room. You're seeing some good social media content coming from there. So we'll see kind of what's happening. But going back to this basketball game, just watching this team play, I mean, they scrap, they fight, they play solid defense. They just, again, they're able to, put the full court press on, and they were able to force Florida to be a little bit uncomfortable at times, but just not defending the 3-point line well, especially down the stretch, ultimately led to the 86-75 final. And it just seemed like every time Vandy would get some momentum, Florida would just keep pushing it. Florida couldn't miss from I would say about 7 minutes on. It just didn't seem like they could miss. And if they did miss, they were going to the line, and they were eventually going to get those points anyway. So it was outstanding. And I think it was, when you look at this game, it's very easy to say that, it's very easy to look at the score and be like, oh, Vandy was not good. Vandy was this, Vandy was that. Right. But sometimes you can play really well, and sometimes you can do a lot of good things, and the other team just comes through and they're better. Florida had a phenomenal night shooting from behind three. They had a really good night on the boards. The size difference showed. Jalen Carey fouls out, but he was in foul trouble most of the second half, so he was a spectator. And just this team is just doing everything that they can. You're starting to see some of the limits that that they've reached, some of their limited abilities. Whereas you have a team of 6'11" guys, 7-footers, and things like that you're going against. It gets a little difficult to play down in the paint. It gets a little difficult to get to the rim. You start to work harder to try to create those baskets. And, Florida just seemed to kind of do it with ease. And some of that is just their experience together, playing together. Some of that is just that alone. And Vandy obviously doesn't have that, as they've all just met in June when the roster was finalized and they were able to actually start practicing. Mark Byington, brand new, he's establishing his culture throughout this program. And it shows that if they get a couple of pieces, and I've said this all along, and they've made, at home, they've kind of taken advantage of some opportunities, and you can see the identity that they have. They're tough, competitive, rugged team that will press you and that will do some good things on the floor. But you're starting to see that identity kind of show through a little bit, that, hey, if they get a sharpshooter and a big man and some depth at those positions, and you get a couple of guys that can really light it up, you already have the scores. You have those guys. Tyler Tanner is going to be a certified star. Jason Edwards is a star. AJ Hogard is a really good. He's more than a role player, but not quite the superstar. Jalen Carey is a really good forward, but you just don't have that presence in the paint. And that in the SEC, you got to have that. You got to have that presence down low. You've got to have that guy that you can work the ball into down in the paint, or that's going to get the rebounds and put it home. That's going to be a force on the defensive end, where teams can't just get to the rack all the time, or teams can't just throw up shots because, hey, Florida, I think, was throwing up shots from behind the arc because, hey, they knew they had a rebounding advantage. So, hey, why not? Why not take some shots? Why not do some things in that regard? So it was a good game plan by Florida. They're a good team. They're ranked highly. They're ranked number 6 in the country for a reason. And they showed that. They showed that they have elite shooting from behind the arc. They showed that they're good in rebounding, and showed that they just have a good team chemistry. They work the ball around. They were able to pick up the slack left by Walter Clayton, who was injured. And if it was a must-have situation, he probably could have played, but they didn't want to risk it at this point. And you get a midweek game that I don't want to say is meaningless, but is not exactly it's not exactly March Madness, right? It's not exactly a Sweet 16 game that they're having to figure out what are they going to do with. So they were able to rest him, and they were able to pick up the slack. So hats off to Florida. Point is, hats off to Florida. Hats off to Vandy. I mean, Vandy played a pretty good game. They bounced back, I thought, pretty well from that drubbing in Norman. And that was just a game where you're just like, that's okay. I was wondering when that game was going to come for Vandy, because you knew it was on the horizon somewhere. I didn't think it'd be against Oklahoma, but against Florida, they bounced back, and they bounced back quite well. So it's promising, but they have a tough stretch of games. They have let's see who they have next down the stretch. I haven't memorized the schedule yet, so bear with me on this. I think it's Auburn. They have next. No, I told you it was Texas. They have Texas on Saturday. It's a 11 a.m. tip at home. They have 2 straight home games, Texas and Auburn. So maybe they'll win those 2 and then go get drubbed on the road by Tennessee and Kentucky. Just kind of how the SEC works. So if you're in the show, if you're joining me live, leave your comments. What happened? What did you see? What do you see from this basketball team? What do you think of Mark Byington? I think he's the right. I think this was the right move. I like the direction of the program, just not there yet. It just hasn't been established enough yet. And I think this is a really good foundation. And this is going to be a situation to where Mark Byington, okay, he's taking notes after every game and saying, okay, lack of size happened again. Okay, first priority, we're going to recruit a big man. They're looking in the high school ranks. They're going to look in the portal as well. We're going to get some size. All right, we're going to get some size. So, but hats off to the Gators. Your final 86-75. We're going to put this one to bed and welcome the Longhorns to Nashville again. Maybe we can get them in basketball and make up for football. But speaking of football, much improved from 23 to 24. Going 7-6, winning the Birmingham Bowl. What does improvement look like next year? What are the expectations next year? We'll talk about that next. All right, talking game time. That's right. Looking for tickets to your next big event can be tough. So if it's concert, comedy show, sporting event, you can find the right ticket at the right price. That can be a headache. But with Gametime Picks, it's never been easier. So let me tell you how it works. With Gametime Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Gametime Picks for a while now, and here's why I love it. The curated deals make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. I recently grabbed a super deal for a prime seat, and I could not believe the value. It was a steal. I felt like they were paying me almost. All right, and the seat view feature is a game changer. If for nothing else, use Gametime for that. And before I even hit buy, I can see exactly what my seat will look like in the venue. It's so reassuring. It's so comforting. You just know. You can tell your friends, hey, this is what we're going to expect, right? And you can even show them. So and that's not even. And I said that was the best part. That's not even the best part. It's a game changer, but that's not even the best part. You're covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. So, are you ready to make your next event even better? Well, download the Gametime app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right. Also, speaking of guarantees, I guarantee that the Joint Chiropractic will take care of you. If you're looking to get adjusted, if you're, going through a tough move, you've been working out hard lately, if you're still in the gym with all your New Year's resolutions, it's February. Congrats that you made it past the first month. You made it past the 75 days of January. Go to Joint Chiropractic. They have great treatment plans, even better membership offers, and they will get you right. The one in Bellevue takes care of me. I am due back. I've been going through a lot of stuff, getting my mom moved into her new place, getting her through her rehab process and just kind of supporting her. I haven't been to the Joint Chiropractic, but in a while, I'm going to go back. I could use it. You're going to be able to hear it down the street. My cracks. You're going to hear my back, my neck, all that stuff. Dr. Nolan's going to be like, whoa, you are tight again. Right. And so that's going to be fun. So Joint Chiropractic, 900 locations nationwide. So find one nearest you and go enjoy it, man. Take care of yourself. You should. Joint chiropractic. Do it. All right, we are live. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. Thank you for joining me. If you want to join in on the show, comments are open. Feel free to jump in. Feel free to deliver your comments. We're going to talk some football now. All right, basketball, 86-75 loss at Florida. Tough one, tough way to go, but Florida's sixth in the country. You give them a run. You give them your best shot. Florida gives you their best shot, literally, from three-point land. And they take the victory, and that's what they're supposed to do. They hold serve at home. So very good win for Florida. Much better effort for Vanderbilt and Mark Byington. You can see the identity working. You can see these guys busting their but it's just not meant to be. But football, okay. We all enjoyed last football season. Okay, Diego Pavia made it completely enjoyable for us. All to watch. The entire country, not when I say us, I mean the entire college football community enjoyed watching Diego Pavia, especially when he took down Alabama, especially when the Doors took down Alabama. Because that game, before I really kind of get into what improvement looks like, that game was not a fluke, by the way. People are like, oh, you got lucky. Yeah, we got lucky that, that Diego Pavia is a good quarterback. We get lucky that the defense confused Jalen Milroe. We get lucky that we were able to hold the ball for twice the amount of time that Alabama had the ball. We got lucky that the rocket launcher hit some big field goals. So I guess I'd rather be lucky than good in this scenario. I don't know. Whatever you want to classify as that. It counts as a win over what was a top, I think they were number one at that point. So it's a very, very, very good win for Vandy. And they're going to, it wasn't a fluke. That's the thing. Like, they were in every game. Down the stretch, they got kind of worn out. But for the most part, they were in every single game. They took a then top 10 Missouri to double overtime. Couldn't quite finish it off. I think some of the deficiencies that this Vandy team had were exposed against a guy like Luther Burden. Like, they had some communication issues on the back end and coverage. They were still kind of getting used to some things. They played Luther Burden really well all game long, but they gave up that one big play in overtime, and that got the momentum back for Missouri, and they didn't look backwards. But, just being able to establish the run, being able to actually have success at most of the time, dominating the line of scrimmage and creating space for the run game. Diego Pavia making guys miss. Just when you thought he was hemmed up, he busts out of there for 8 yards or 16 yards or something. Or he uncorks a pass that you're like, where is he throwing it to? Oh my God. And all of a sudden there's a ball that's caught. And you're like, what's going on here? Right. They were just a few pieces away from they were like probably 3 plays away from 8 wins before the bowl game. They were probably about 6 plays away from 9 wins. If you beat Missouri, if you just make them drive in overtime, they probably don't win. If you don't have your head jammed up your butt against Georgia State, you obviously win that game. Against Texas, if you just there was a couple plays in the second quarter that if you make those plays, they don't build that lead that they build, and they had just enough pad to hold off Vandy in that game. Vandy made a furious comeback, ran out of time, but Texas did themselves favors by building a pad. So a lot of great things happening. So what does improvement look like? Okay, what does this team got to be improved? Okay, well, first and foremost, I think offensively, you got to find a passing game. You got to find playmakers in the passing game. You've got to find that. You've got to see who those guys are going to be. Is it going to be the new guys, the new transfers? Is Junior Sherrill going to end up being that guy, right? Is it going to be Eli Stowers again, and then everyone else trying to figure out where they fit? Is it going to be one of these new freshmen? Is it going to be LeBron Hill? Is it going to be, Is it going to be Barrett? Is it going to be Joseph McVeigh, who caught a long bomb against Missouri on the first play? Who's it going to be, right? Who's going to step up? That's what I want you to know. You tell me in the comments who you think is going to step up to be that leading receiver, to be that dog, to be that number one guy, right? Who's it going to be? Like, that's what they've got to figure out in the spring, right? They've got to figure out what they can do and who they can do that with, right? Can they push the ball vertically down the field? Can Diego Pavia improve that part of his game? Because if he can, they've got some guys that can push it downfield. They've just got to commit to taking more shots, and they've got to be, they've got to start to kind of hit those shots too as well. So, it goes without saying. What can they do intermediately across the middle of the field? Like, how can they attack that? How can they figure out how they can get the ball down the field more than just a run game? Because people are expecting the run. People are loading up against the option. They're going to stop Cedric Alexander. They're going to make it their point to force Diego Pavia to throw from the pocket. That's going to be every defensive coordinator's game plan. Keep Diego Pavia in the pocket. Force him to beat you from there. Do not let him run. Do not let him scramble. Do not let him sprint out. Keep him in the pocket. Close the pocket, because he's not a pocket guy. He's not. I love Diego Pavia. He's not a pocket guy. He creates. He's great on sprint out. He's great when he can create space for himself. But when you close that space down and you get defenders bearing down on him, he just doesn't. I mean, his accuracy goes way down. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks are that way, but it's not good. So they have to figure out ways to combat that. Set the protections. Get the ball out. Get guys that can turn a slant into a huge gain. Get somebody that can push the ball vertically down the field. Get somebody that can run screens and take screens the distance. They tried to run some screens and they were a little bit successful. And of course, they've built along the offensive line, so they're going to get some push on the offensive line. So that's going to be good. But yeah, I think it's going to be a scenario to where that's like the main thing. If you want this offense to go, that's the main thing. Find some improvement in your passing game. Find some playmakers. Find some concepts you like. Pavia is good at throwing in breaking routes, right? He's not great at throwing the field speed out. All right, but he's good at throwing hitches. He's good at throwing slants. He's good at throwing digs. He's good at throwing crossing routes. Anything that's breaking inward, he's good at throwing. So why not take advantage of that? Get enough of it. I'm not saying you have to go out and be completely opposite and be an air raid team. That's not what I'm saying. That's not improvement either. You're not going to tip. You got to find balance. Is really what it is. And every time I say balance, I know everybody in here is thinking 50% run, 50% pass. That's not balance. That's not balance. Because if it's 50% run, 50% pass, you're probably likely only getting 2 to 3 guys involved, versus if it's true balance, it means you're involving everybody, or as many people as you possibly can. You're getting guys involved in the passing game. You're getting tight ends. You're getting wide receivers, slot guys, backs. You're getting everybody involved. Maybe even a tackle eligible. I don't know. But we'll continue the discussion here next. All right, I just want to remind you guys, we're live, actually. So you can leave some comments. You can get involved in the show. But we are live, Locked On Vandy. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like. Make sure you follow on social media. But what does improvement look like? Okay. Well, improvement has got to be, I think it's got to be 8 regular season wins. I think you've got to look on this schedule and you got to find 8 wins in that schedule, which, they're going 12-0. Well, you got 3 of them. So you need to find 5 more wins. Okay. So you got 3: Charleston Southern, Georgia State, Utah State. You got to get those. If you don't get those, then you can kiss that goodbye. Virginia Tech, that's got to be a win. So now you're halfway home. You win all your non-conference games, you're halfway there. All right. South Carolina early can be a win. Bama, depending on what they figure out with their quarterback situation, that could be a team where they are looking at seriously considering firing Kalen DeBoer. LSU, they're going to be good, but like I just don't know like what they're going to be. They did well in the portal, and they were on the cusp of being a playoff team. But then at other times, you're just like, what's going on? Missouri with Bo Pribula, they're going to be good. Missouri's good. They're a good team, but like, how good are they going to be? You get them a little bit later in the season, they find a groove. How good are they going to be? Texas, they lose a lot of people, but you're on the road. How good is Texas really going to be? They got Arch Manning. They're still Texas, but are they going to be the same Texas from last year? Who knows? All right. Auburn, I just don't buy it until Hugh Freeze is gone. Kentucky, there's a win. And at Tennessee, that's a tough one to get, right? So you got Auburn, Kentucky. You got Utah State, Georgia State, Virginia Tech, Charleston Southern. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you need 2 more wins. I think you get South Carolina. I think you get Missouri. I think those are your 8 wins. That's how I think it shakes out. That's what improvement looks like. If you want to be a legitimate program, that's how it looks. How does it look to you? Whether you're with me live or you're seeing this later, leave it for me in the comments. What does improvement look like? How does that look to you? All right. How does it look on offense? How does it look on defense? How does it look in special teams? Special teams, you make the big kicks, you flip the field in the punt game, you cover with the coverage units, and you tackle. All right. Defensively, pressure the quarterback without having to bring fancy blitzes all the time. And part of that's going to be the added depth along the defensive front. That's going to help. And that's going to help get guys in. You have different personnel packages as well. So when you look at your schedule, there's certain games where you're going to be using all the big guys, and there's certain games where you're going to have a lot of speed on the field. But if you can, with your base personnel, if you can cover, tackle, and pressure the quarterback without getting too fancy all the time. Now there's a time and place for those. That's going to be the key to defense, right? Communicate well in the back end, tackle well in space, pressure the quarterback, and be able to get pressure on the quarterback with just 4 guys. You have to do that. You pressure Nico, that Tennessee game might look totally different. So that's just kind of where – and then, offensively, talked about it. Find a pass game. Find who's your playmakers, right? How are you going to create space to do what you really want to do, which is run the ball with Pavia, with Seti, with the stable of running backs. How are you going to accomplish creating space? How do you get the defense off balance? How do you win first down? All those things are going to play into the fact that we can find 8 wins on that schedule. That's how those 8 wins are going to happen. Find playmakers. Find guys in the passing game besides Eli Stowers. Find somebody that can make a play besides Diego Pavia. That's what you got to do. You got to find that. And that's a tough thing to find, especially in this league, especially with that schedule. It's not an easy thing to do. But I think Vandy, from everything that you're hearing from recruits, from what you're seeing on social media, that's kind of all we're privy to anyway, from the few insiders that kind of have a little bit of a pulse for the program. It just seems like everybody feels really good about this program. Agree, disagree, play it out in the comments. But if I have no reason to believe that this team can't continue this path that we're on, right? There's nothing that says, well, actually, there is something that says it's called the SEC that can dictate a lot of things. But this team has shown that they're capable of winning, and not like fluke wins where the other team just plays like complete garbage and you get lucky because they play like garbage and it's like a turnover fest or penalty fest. Like Vandy wasn't winning games like that. Vandy went out there and beat Virginia Tech. They went out on the road at Kentucky, at Auburn, beat those teams. They beat Alabama, right? They beat, the other wins, They beat Georgia Tech in the bowl game, right? They went out and they took those games and they took control of those games. It was no fluke. So that's the reason I have confidence in what's going to happen. It wasn't a fluke. Those wins were not fluke wins. Defense made plays. Offense made plays when it mattered. Defense made plays when it mattered, even with the limited crew. So those wins were not flukes. I would, there's wins out there that exist that are fluke wins, right? There are wins like that. And Vandy's had their fair share of wins. A lot of Vandy's wins over the last 10 years have been fluke wins, have been like as a result of, oh, this team played like complete garbage. They turned it over 5 times and they had 10 penalties for 150 yards. Like that doesn't win you games, right? But Vandy was able to win games when they lost the turnover battle. They were able to win games when they were down in total yards. They were able to win games when their offense wasn't producing as much. They were able to win games when their defense wasn't producing as much. They've won in all shapes and sizes. They've won even matchups. They've won road matchups in places like Jordan Air Stadium. So it's not a fluke. But that's going to do it for me, though. That's going to end this live show. If you want to comment, you can comment after this is published, and we'll see you back here next time. Probably won't be live next time, but we'll see you back here next time on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you back here. Behave yourselves. Anchor down. Peace.